Republican leaders are working to meet lawmakers' final demands in an effort to pass their tax bill as the clock ticks down on their self-imposed holiday deadline. Today, congressional members finalize their tax plan. The goal is to pass it in both the House and the Senate next week, but they have concerns about passage in the Senate. One last-minute change, a reported expansion to the child tax credit. That was a demand made by Florida Senator Rubio, who was threatening to vote against the bill if the credit didn't do more to help low-income families. He hasn't confirmed yet that his demand has been met, but President Trump has thrown his full support behind the move.
We're putting in a tremendous child tax credit, and it is increasing on a daily basis.
Rachael Bade is a congressional reporter for Politico. She joins us now. I want to ask you about Senator Corker. He's been a no from the get-go. Can you remind us again why that is?
So Corker is one of the few Republicans on the Hill who has really stuck to his guns when it comes to being a deficit hawk. And that means somebody who does not want to grow the deficit, which is now $20 trillion. And he's worried that these tax cuts are just going to do that. Obviously, Republicans are hoping that over the long haul, they can grow the economy and that this $1.5 trillion tax cut ends up paying for itself. There are a lot of economists who do not think that will happen, and I think Corker is very concerned about that. Another thing I would say to watch is Susan Collins. She's a Republican from Maine, and she is only going to be a yes on this tax bill because McConnell promised her that he would pass an Obamacare subsidy bill by the end of the year to pretty much shore up those healthcare markets. Now, the problem with that is that the House hates this idea, and House Republicans will go nuts if Speaker Paul Ryan agrees with McConnell and puts a bill on the floor that gets Collins to yes, but could very much alienate Republicans on other matters coming down the pipeline. So
you've got all these issues. I mean, what's the confidence level here, Rachel, with actually getting this passed with this Christmas deadline?
Despite all of the complications that they still have to iron out in the next few days, there's a lot of optimism right now on the Hill with Republicans. I think that they are so close. A lot of them are super desperate to return to their districts for the holiday break to say, look what we did. We finally have our first big legislative win. A lot of people were really frustrated all year, especially when Obamacare repeal fell through. So there's this feeling on the Hill that they have to get this done. I wouldn't be surprised if, if this vote were to be delayed because of Senator McCain, if they just wait in town until he's feeling better and then take this back up before Christmas or New Year's, for instance.
And is there a sense that McCain could come back, or what are you hearing in the next few days?
Unclear at this point. It sounds like he's struggling. And for instance, Senator Lindsey Graham, he talked to McCain's wife and basically didn't even want to talk about whether he could make the vote next week. Like the number one issue for Senator Graham was, how is he doing? Like, is he feeling better? Senators have been talking on the Hill saying that he hasn't been himself recently, that he typically is a talker. He's very much always vocal in conference and gives his opinion and is always joking around. He's just been very calm and quiet lately. So I think there's a lot of concern about him. I'm not going to lie. But
I want to also turn to and ask you about this big date circled in the calendar for next week, the government funding deadline, December 22nd. Where's Congress on passing a spending bill?
Now that's funny. They're so focused on tax reform that they have totally no plan when it comes to what they're going to do next week.
You haven't heard much about this, right? I mean,
we're hearing a lot about it, but the issue is they're all on different pages. There's no coherent strategy, and I think this is going to be a big problem for Republicans because it gives Democrats even more leverage because they can sort of stick together and sort of use their votes to get what they want on certain things regarding government funding. So my sense on this, and most of the sources that I think are correct on how this is going to play out, is that this is going to get kicked into January. I think that there's probably been this sort of, I don't want to say secret handshake, but sort of this gentleman's agreement that they're going to deal with a lot of this stuff in January. So I wouldn't be surprised if next week creeps up on us. They're still focused on tax reform. That ends up being, taking up more time than they want. And there's some sort of agreement with Democrats that we're going to give you what you want, but probably not until January. We don't have time to iron out the deal right now. So that could happen in January. Also, dreamers, undocumented immigrants who came to the country as kids.
Another big topic.
Their legal status, obviously Democrats have been pushing to get that resolved by the end of the year as part of these spending negotiations to keep the government open. But again, like the sense I'm getting, even from some Democrats, is that now they're okay with sort of maybe doing this in January. So it sounds like all the drama we thought we were going to have next week could very well be kicked into the new year. We won't know for sure, I don't think, until after the tax bill passes, because right now Republicans don't want to talk about anything else other than tax reform. They want to get that done first.
It totally is sucking up all the oxygen on tax reform. Speaking of drama, what's going on with House Speaker Paul Ryan and the White House pushing back on these reports? Is he coming? Is he going? Is he staying? Is he eyeing the exit? What's happening?
So what you hear privately is different than what you're going to hear publicly. I've known that as a reporter for a long time, right? We went into this story knowing full well that the reaction publicly was going to be pushed back. Speaker Paul Ryan cannot be seen as a lame duck speaker. He has way too much to do. He wants to do entitlement reform after tax reform. There's the spending negotiations. There's the Dreamer negotiations. If he came out and acknowledged that he was leaving at the end of the year, chances are he couldn't get what he wants on those things. Also, it could undercut his re-election campaign. We understand he's going to run for re-election as if he's going to stay in Congress next year and then resign at the end of next year, just to help fellow House Republicans and try to keep the Republican majority. So that could undercut his, his campaign and his the majority for the Republicans next year. However, if you look at the pushback we've received, it's very gentle, and it's sort of what we call a non-denial denial, right? So for instance, the office came out and said, Paul Ryan is going to be here throughout all of 2018 and working on entitlement reform. That's what we reported. He plans to be here. Also, it was interesting because the White House also had the same line that Paul Ryan had, and also his friend Governor Scott Walker in Wisconsin had, which is Paul Ryan is going nowhere now, which is, again, I think he wants to stay through the end of the year. There's some talk about conservatives who are unhappy with Ryan trying to push him out in January. That, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think that really is speculation. But we've known for a long time that Paul Ryan saw this job as just a temporary thing. And we know that he wants to get back to his kids. And he's starting to talk to people about, how do I get out of this, and looking at the exit.
All right, I want to ask you lastly, the president was asked about pardoning former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn today. I want to play you his response for a second.
I don't want to talk about pardons for Michael Flynn yet. We'll see what happens. Let's see. I can say this. When you look at what's gone on with the FBI and with the Justice Department, people are very, very angry. Thank you very much, everybody.
He used the word yet. Rachel, you were talking about how you read between the lines and when people say stuff on Capitol Hill and at the White House. What would be the reaction from Congress if he were to actually move forward with this pardon?
So I think there was a reason that after the president said that his lawyer in the White House specifically came out and said the White House is not considering a pardon right now. And that is because if the president starts talking about a pardon, people on the Hill are going to go nuts. They would see that as him interfering in an investigation that they say is imperative that it remain independent, and they want Bob Mueller to be able to do his job and continue investigating. So talk of a pardon could really undercut what he's trying to do in terms of talking to witnesses and flipping people and trying to find out if there was coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. I do think there's sort of a split going on right now in the Republican Party on the Hill. And that is, you have a lot of Republicans, pro-Trump Republicans, who are taking the same line that you heard right there with the president in talking about the FBI and the DOJ losing credibility. They're sort of holding up these news reports about FBI agents sending political texts against Trump, trying to say that this investigation is not fair and it's not going to give him a fair shake. But I do think overwhelmingly most Republicans on the Hill are not thinking like that. And if the president talks about a pardon or in any way attacking the FBI and the DOJ, I do think that most Republicans are going to have a very negative reaction to that and be very upset and try to tamp that down as soon as possible if they're not already trying to do so.
Rachael Bade with Politico. Great to have you on, Rachel.
Thank you so much.